This is a review of my solution to assignment 2. I have the form up here that starts with assignment 2, and I've left the fields filled in as I demonstrated in the last lesson where I showed you what the assignment description was. Now, you've seen the form. I click the submit button. We get back the form that we saw before in assignment 1, but we get it placed in a division. Likewise here, if I calculate the interest rate, I get that amount shown as being financed at the interest rate, and here's the monthly payment, again within a separate division. If I leave information out and calculate it, I get please enter amount, please enter an interest rate. Here, I caught both errors in one swoop. Now if I put in some garbage in here and calculate, I show you that the amount entered was not numeric and that the interest rate entered was not numeric. So let's see what this looks like in code. There we go. Here's the code, assignment 2. So now we're going to start with a form. Actually, we're going to start with a page. There are 2 forms in this page. Here's the first div. Now this div doesn't have anything to do with the assignment. It's holding the logo. I've got assignment 2 HTML as being the logo as a link. I made it a link. Why did I do that? Watch this. If I click here and I don't want to hit the back button and I want to get quickly back to the beginning of the page, I'm going to click on this logo, click on it, and I come back with a fresh new page to enter new data. So that was something that you can do like this. You start with an anchor tag, which is essentially a link. Say where you want it to go, back to the HTML file. I gave it a border of 0, so we don't have any lines around it. And instead of words for the link, I used an image tag as a link. There's the King logo JPEG and the alternate text for when the image doesn't display. All right, let's look at the next form. This is in the next division called guest. Guest is the form that we used before for assignment 1, but I've now put it inside this div. Here's the form. I'm calling assignment 2 thank you PHP. In assignment 1, it was called assignment 1 thank you.php. Same code, same form, just brought into this new division. The next division is the calculator division, which, again, I put a paragraph at the top there, and I started a new form and a table. I got things to line up nicely by putting it in a table. You may recall we did this in an earlier lesson to get things to line up nice. So the amount financed, the interest rate, all part of input type equals text. Okay? And then the submit button. I chose to put the submit button after the table. You can put it in the table if you'd like. So those are 3 divs. Let's look at those in the CSS file. This is the king_2.css. A lot of things we've seen before, but let's go all the way down to the bottom and we'll look at the 2 IDs. Remember, when you have a pound sign in front of an ID or in front of a name, it refers to the ID of the division. We're always using position absolute here, and I positioned these down a little bit farther than I did in the earlier examples in the class because I have a logo that I have to make sure that I drop below. The logo was about 70 or 80 pixels or so, so I didn't want to start my form until I'm down about 100 pixels. Likewise, the left was fine. The first division is left just 10 pixels, but remember, the next one is to the left, this time 550 pixels, because I add the left to the width, and that puts it out 510 pixels from the left right there. So I know if I don't want overlap, I've got to go a little farther. There are cases in design where you do want overlap of divisions, but we're not going to do that here. So you've seen this stuff before, the different colors, special color code to get the color to come out as I'm showing it. Let's go to the thank you PHP. This is the one from the form. It looks very much like what we had before, but the only real difference is I'm carrying through the div ID guest here instead of just displaying the information on the page. Notice up here that I've got the king2.css file being referred to. So I use div ID guest here and go back to the original form. I'm going to scroll all the way up. I used div ID guest here. So I didn't have to redefine it by placing the CSS file up here at the top as a style sheet, then I can take advantage of those definitions for those boxes, those divs that are boxes on the page using the box model. I can use this over and over again just by repeating the ID in both pages. Here, when we look at assignment 2 mortgage.php, I did something very similar. I used the King2 CSS file and I have mortgage results as my division ID. Now, let's take a look at this. Mortgage results are different, though, than mortgage because the div for the mortgage results appears all the way to the left side of the page. Let's go look at that again, just to be sure. On the assignment 2 page, scrolling all the way down, I called it div ID calculator. But in the mortgage 2 PHP, I didn't use the calculator div again. Let's go all the way down. I used the mortgage results div, which put the results all the way to the left side of the page. If I'm losing you here, I'll take you back to the form really quick. Here's the information. Calculate, and you can see that I'm using this over here for the div. It's not where it originally appeared, so I couldn't repeat it. Now, what I did in the page, let me take you to the top of the page. I have the logo, and then I have some PHP where I'm just getting the information together. I'm getting the amount financed, the interest rate, and now I'm doing the validations. This is very similar to what you saw before, but I did something a little bit different. I kept them in a special variable called message. I didn't print them as soon as I saw them. In an earlier lesson, I printed a message as soon as I found it, and I got right out of the page. So here's another way to do that, where you can collect all of your error messages and then print them near the end of the process. So $MSG is blank, and the error count is set to 0 before we start this process. So I check to see if it's empty, the amount financed, and if it is, I add. The dot equals is like saying $message equals $message plus this stuff. Not a true plus, but appended text. This will add this text to the $message. I've got a break. I've got the span. I put in front of it error message because I've got some CSS for error message. Let's go look at that real quick. It says color red. So I want my error messages to be color red. Now when I use a dot like this with the word error message, that says that I'm going to use a class. Been a little while since we've covered that, but we did go over it earlier. So class, error message, and the span. And now I bump up the error count by 1. This is a little shortcut. When you have a plus plus after a variable name, it's the same thing as saying add 1 to this error count and update its value with that new value of being upped by 1. Here we're checking to make sure the field, if it's not numeric, that's an error. We add to the error count. We add to the error message. We concatenate this error message on there. And we go through the interest rate and we do a similar kind of thing. So now we get down to the end. We're going to do our calculations, or near the end. Doing the interest rate, I'm taking that whole number that was entered and I'm dividing by 100 so I can get this expressed properly as a percentage for mathematics. I'm making it 0.052 for 5.2. And now I have an interest for the calculation. I do the amount financed by the interest for the calculation and then divide that by 12. That gives me the monthly payment. Now, the monthly payment, I want to look nice. So you use the number format function that we saw earlier. I just say, that's the monthly payment. Show me up to 2 decimal places and put it in a field that I label monthly payment formatted. Go down here to mortgage results, and here I've got in a PHP block. Notice how I can open and close them. I have one open here, and then I have a div here that's just native HTML. That's not coming out of PHP. You can open and close as many PHP blocks as you want. So I make a decision here. I say, if that error count is greater than 0, that means we got an error somewhere, so print the messages. And that's all I print. Else, if I didn't get an error, mortgage count is not greater than 0, then I print this other class called top of div, mortgage calculation. Then I print out you financed. Now see how I put the $sign here within this string? That's because this is just something to see. It's not really part of the number. I put it in front of the number here. Then I add an interest rate of interest rate, and I concatenate the percent sign and the ellipsis. So these are little formatting tricks. And again, here I put the $sign as part of a string so it would appear in front of the amount formatted. It's not part of it natively, so you have to stick it in there. There's other ways to do this. This is just one way to do this.